Howdy folks, for today's video, well first off I'll say welcome back. It's been a while since I've done a video on something, other than the podcast. But for today's video, then I just want to do a VR video, and this one is in response to one of the comments that was left on a video I did, I think it was a few years back, where I did a function test of a loaded Magpul PMAG. It was a Gen 1 PMAG, one like this, that I left it loaded in the safe for, I was initially intending to do it for 10 years, and it turned out to be about, I think it was just about 12 years. And I left it unloaded in the safe and without the little, what do you call it, cap on top, right, that it pushes the ammo down to release some of the tension on the magazine feed lips. Anyways, so I did a video on this where I was testing it after having it in the safe. Of course it was temperature controlled for 12 years, being in a safe inside my house. So and it was only a sample size of one. But I thought it was a cool test, and I did leave it in there for 12 years, so it was a video that was 12 years in the making. And one of the comments recently, a guy was calling me out on it and saying that the magazine that I was using, this one, was actually a Gen 3 PMAG. The Gen 3 PMAGs window were released like in 2012, which is what you are holding in your hand in the first half of the video. I want to address that comment, because if someone read that and they assumed that I was basically, the only thing you could assume was that I was either mistaken or I was lying, and I was doing neither of those. And the funny thing about it is that the guy was calling this a windowed PMAG, and the Gen 1 PMAGs, this is one of the green ones, they would have the same, I guess it was molded in, the window was molded into the PMAG even when they didn't have a window on them, as you can see. So maybe he saw this and thought it was a window. But the other thing that was kind of interesting is that he assumed that since it had a window, that it was a Gen 3 PMAG, and this right here is another Gen 1 PMAG, and it is a windowed PMAG. So one thing you can notice on the windowed ones is that they have 3 little dots molded into it, and I'll go over this a little bit later, but the window shape and size is different than the Gen 3s. So the Gen 1 non-windowed PMAG, it has those same 3 dots on there, which is, just as a side note, it's kind of interesting. So I wanted to clarify that, not calling out the guy who was calling out me, but just as an informational video, I want to kind of take a up-close look at the differences between a Gen 1 PMAG, a Gen 2 PMAG, and the Gen 3 PMAG. So let's go ahead and I'm going to change the camera and show focus on my bench, and I'll just show all 3 of these. And I have this other additional PMAG as it's a Gen 1, just to reference and to show some of the differences with the window of the Gen 3 and Gen 1. So, alright, so here you can see we have the Gen 1 PMAGs, a Gen 2, and the Gen 3. Now, first off, so I'm going to just kind of show some physical and visible differences between the different PMAGs, and you guys can just see, I guess, the evolution of the different PMAGs in the different generations. So, first off, when we're talking about the little magazine caps that go on the top, One of the things I noticed was that the Gen 1 cap will snap right into the Gen 2, and the Gen 3, it fits, the Gen 1 will fit on the Gen 3. When I've tried to put the Gen 3 cap onto the, so it fits on the Gen 3. When I try and put it on the Gen 2 and Gen 1, it doesn't snap in, and it looks like it just doesn't fit on these ones. You can see that it looks like it fits, but the teeth in the bottom, they don't latch in, and so there's a difference right there between the the Gen 3 and the Gen 2 and 1. When you look on the sides that fit inside the magazine well, this one, you can see it just says Magpul Industries Corp, Colorado, and it also says use top impact cover when storing magazine loaded. So up here it just has this more generic print, and on the Gen 2 you can see that it says PMAG 30 and some other stuff, and then it says Gen M2 MOE. So I'm not sure if all the Gen 2 PMAGs have that, say M2 on them, but this one that I have for an example does. This third one, or I guess the Gen 3, it looks really similar to the Gen 2 as far as the wording up there, but this one says Gen M3, and then it has the I don't know what that number is, but the patent and magpul.com. So up there, they're all very similar. These have a more generic, the Gen 1s have a more generic stamp in there. Okay, on the bottom of the magazines, you can see that the Gen 1, it will say PMAG 30. So that's stamped right towards the bottom there. And that's the same with this color. Both are Gen 1s. And the Gen 2 also says PMAG 30. And this one does not. It just has some, texture right here. That looks like a little square texturing right there. So, and now when you look at the followers, you can see that the Gen 1s have a black follower, and I don't know if you can even tell on that, but Gen 1s have a black follower. The Gen 2s have kind of a greenish colored follower, and I believe all Gen 2s have that, and all Gen 1s have the black follower. And then on the Gen 3, it's like a kind of a bright gray. There's a bright gray follower. So I'm not sure if some of the Gen 3s have a black follower, but the one that I have right here has a gray. So there's the difference in colors of followers. You can also see when you go further down to the portion below where it locks into the magwell, you have this pattern, and it has 4 squares, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. This one has, the Gen 2 has a slightly different pattern. It's got 3 of the squares, and they're a bit larger than on the Gen 1s. And then the Gen 3s also have the 3, but they're like a little bit shorter, and maybe that's because of the window. Now let's look at the very bottom. You can see that the magazine base plate is a little bit chunkier on the Gen 1 and 2. It's the same. So it looks like Gen 1 and Gen 2 use that same chunky base plate. This one has a little bit of texture where that line goes down. It bumps out a little bit there, so I'm not sure if it fits on totally fine or not, or if each generation is incompatible with the previous generation or the other generations. But they look really similar besides that little part that sticks out right there. And you can see the Gen 3, it has like a little zigzag cut down there, which the Gen 2 and Gen 1s don't have. If you look at the back side of them, you can see that there's different textures on, continuing, I guess, from the side. You can see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, and then this one is, the Gen 3 looks really different. It has that little part that sticks out here, and you got all these little tiny lines, but you got 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's another difference, and you can see that how they connect on that back is a little bit different too. This covers up the whole back. This has a visible part, and that's because it slides in that way. So I guess on the other side, take a quick look at that. Then this is where you have your time and date stamp. I guess not time, but your date stamp, where it will have the year in the middle, and then kind of like a watch hand, it will point to the month. So you have the month and the year of the MAG, and that's how you know how old or when it was built. And so that's stamped into the magazines. This Gen 3, it looks like this one was made in 2016 in July. This one, that's kind of interesting. This one says it is 21, so 2021. And this one is in 08. And this one is 09. So if the guy was assuming that windowed PMAGs didn't come out till the Gen 3, sorry, you are mistaken. The one difference you can tell between the window is that this window is a lot longer than the window in the Gen 1s. And also the little dimples in there, you have 1, 2 on the Gen 3, and you have 1, 2, 3 on the Gen 1s. None of this really matters much, I don't think, but it is just a visible difference. So, anyways, this one, like I said, in the Gen 1s, they molded them with the window kind of built in. You can still see the 1, 2, 3 little stubby holes, and you know, it's the same size of window, or I guess what the window would have been if they had punched that out and put the window in. But yeah, obviously this one is a Gen 1, and it is not this. So hopefully this video is somewhat educational. But yeah, anyways, I did in fact put this magazine in my safe, and it was about 12 years, and you know, didn't touch it, and then I shot it.
And you know the velocity of the gun is 12.
We'll try a couple rapid fires.
Look up the math. You're right, it's complex math.
Anyways, as you can obviously tell, this has some very distinct differences, the Gen 1 non-windowed with the Gen 3 windowed, and almost the same differences with the Gen 1 windowed and the Gen 3 windowed. You can definitely see some differences in that. So anyways, I hope this was somewhat educational for you guys if you're wondering some of the differences of the PMAGs. Maybe you have an old PMAG that you don't know what gen it is, and you wanted to find that out, and so you can check with all those things: the follower color, the stamping on the sides where it goes inside the mag well, and the date times, or the date stamp on the side, and the differences between the windows of the little two hole or two divot window with a larger window, or the three with the three dimpled window and shorter window of the Gen 1s. But yeah, I kind of wish I had done thought ahead and thrown a bunch of these mags without the cap on top, so I could do a more thorough test, and when they first came out with the Gen 2s and the Gen 3s, I wish I would have bought some and done the same thing, but it was just, in fact, it was, I had thrown this in my safe before I even did like YouTube videos and stuff. It was just a test that I wanted to know for myself, and some of the guys at the gun store, we were all curious, so I bought some and I said, hey, I'm going to do this, and so... But just wanted to share out that information with you guys, and hopefully, like I said, hopefully it's educational to some degree, and hopefully to the guy who assumed I was using the wrong mag and lying about it or whatever, mistaken, that he can realize that there are some differences here, and he can see the differences and be able to identify magazines a little bit better. So until next time, stay safe, have fun, and go do something and go do something nice for somebody. Catch you later.